Hey guys, and welcome back to our next session. Truly, I'm even very pumped for this session myself. So just to give you a bit of an introduction, this is the rise, fall and future of influencing with Fluff Casual Cosmetics. So I'm going to give you a bit of a breakdown as to what this actual session is about. So, think about this. Around the world at the moment, young people are rejecting the paths taken by their parents and the values that define them. There are so many different ways that influencers are working within the space, and it is such a popular topic at the moment. I'm actually going to throw it to Erica and Alan, who will introduce their own segment and continue the conversation with you guys. But before we kick it over, please remember to ask all your questions in the chat box, and the girls will be answering as you go. So welcome to CareerCon, guys.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for having us.
No, you're more than welcome. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing your topic, that would be amazing, just so everyone knows what it is and what's it about.
Yeah, no worries. I will just get straight into it. So I'm Erica, and I'm the founder of Fluff, and this is Ellen, who heads up our brand management. And we really wanted this to just be a casual conversation about the state of influencer culture, especially having been around for its beginning, seeing its peak, like experiencing this messy middle that we currently find ourselves in, and hoping for a positive end or an evolution. So we're really going to discuss the often overlooked responsibility of being an influencer, the role of influencer brand has, and then finding whether your influence is through starting a company or a personal brand or working within one.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so we'll hand it over to the guys and let's get started.
Cool, thanks. So before we begin, I think it was really important. We wanted to define 3 types of influencers that we're going to be talking about or referencing in this talk, just because there's sort of small distinctions, and I think it'll help you guys follow along and perhaps ask questions. But really feel free as we're talking to anything that comes to your mind, because we really want to address it and for you guys to get the most out of this. But so the 3 types of kind of influencers that we will touch on is the original sort of influential individual. So this is kind of, I guess, when it all started with social media, and it was genuine, authentic referrals from individuals who wanted to share their experience with brands with their followers. Next, we're sort of going to go into the traditional social media influencer, which we all probably know this category, and it's what comes up in your Explore feed. Usually it's a sponsored post, maybe it's promoting a weight loss tea or a collagen boosting supplement or a face mask. And finally, we're going to talk about the future of influencers, which we believe is an activist. And these are individuals that are discussing movements, not selling products. But this doesn't mean that they won't talk about brands. Do you want to touch on anything on that?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of go through a little bit of that as well in my section that'll come through, but also, I guess, just our experience, I guess, that we've had with these 3 different types of influencers and where we landed to be what do we feel comfortable with, and can we still uphold our sort of brand integrity. So that's kind of what I will cover shortly. But I think, yeah, Eri will kind of start with the beginning, the middle and the end.
So Fluff is in this really interesting position, and a lot of people label us as sort of being very anti-influencer or sort of rebels in the industry and having a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, which is definitely true at times, but I think it's really important to sort of say that we value the role of an influential person, and we really do believe that influencer culture has its pros, but we're very aware of its cons, and sort of the internet just as a broader concept. So alongside the power of discovery and connection, there's a really addictive and toxic nature that actually fuels disconnect and comparison by influencers. And if this isn't moderated or regulated, both internally from brands and individuals and then externally, there's this real possibility of losing control. So we really believe that brands need to work to safeguard that future for their consumers and their stakeholders. So when we sort of talk about social media in general, I think it's important to note that like influencer culture is fairly new. It's less than 10 years old. And I kind of feel like it's an angsty teen right now. Like it hasn't fully developed or matured or evolved. And we aren't as a society really fully aware of the impact that current traditional influencers will have on society. So while the idea of influence is ever evolving and has been around for a very long time, what we want to focus on is like the technology platforms that we engage with today that have really changed the fabric of society and the way that we communicate as individuals. So in 2013 was probably my like first experience with influencers when I co-founded Frank Body, and it was a completely different time and space to where we are today. So we gifted product to people who we like truly believed would like what we were about and the message that we were sending, that we were trying to shake up the industry a little bit and really remove the taboo of a woman's beauty routine. And I think that message really resonated with influencers or people who are interested in the skincare and beauty space, and they generally just wanted to share that with all of their followers. You know, we had this novelty product that people wanted to engage with, so everything really worked in our favor. And we were able to put our brand in front of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people where we never would have had access to them before and in such a short amount of time.
And it also felt like, to me, I guess I was more a consumer of that brand. Like I obviously still knew you as a friend, but I definitely was just consuming it. And for my experience, it was like unusual that a brand was asking people to take photos in their product, like, which is crazy to think that was only, you know, not that long ago.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, I would take photos in the scrub and stuff. And I was like, this is wild.
And it was totally novelty. And now it's just like, it's just commonplace. Like you expect to see someone holding a shampoo bottle next to their face. It's crazy. I think the problem was how quickly it moved, and the results were really addictive both for brands and influencers themselves. But because there was no regulation, like up until the last 2 or 3 years, we really believe it was taken advantage of, both from brands and from an influencer perspective, and people forgot their duty of responsibility. So like in today's age, we have brands that are built off the back of influencer marketing strategies, and they literally raise money and rely on a Kardashian's Instagram post where they could be asking for payments anywhere between $10,000 to $100,000 or more for one Instagram post. But that can set a business up. But I guess the danger in that is the message that influencer is putting across and promoting via being associated with those brands, but two, from a business perspective, like that reliance on influencer activity. So we also hear about brands that would gift up to 5,000 units of their stock per month to people. And I think it brings up the question for me, like, is this realistic? How can small indie brands compete when they have to be purchasing or buying that much stock purely to gift to people? And are we really moving too fast to kind of realize the impact that we're having outside of just wanting to make money for the business ourselves?
I feel like there's also an element of just total like waste in that as well.
Totally.
Like think about the packaging and things that just get produced for people to take one photo and it probably be discarded.
Exactly. We're really promoting this culture of over-consumption of products, of content, of information, and moving really fast without stopping and thinking of the impact or who you're buying from. And I think what's resulted is we have a lot of brands that have this, I guess, desire or plan to build a company within 2 to 5 years and then sell out, as opposed to building a brand or a business over 10, 20 years and relying on small communities and word of mouth. And so when your brand moves so quickly, or if you're working for a company that's moving so quickly, like you have to start thinking about what corners you have to cut to keep up, and what values are you compromising just to get those extra sales and to keep growing. So before we kind of talk about this idea of just being influenced, there's 2 quotes that I wanted to share. One was from Kanye West, where he says, "My power is not my influence. My power is not to be influenced." And I think that's really strong and a message or sentiment that we actually try to carry through at Fluff, this idea actually of unfollowing and of really being able to consume content without letting it consume you. The second quote that I really liked was a YouTube video that I don't even know how I stumbled across and couldn't find it again, but there was a guy talking about the impact of influencers and relating it to, I guess, any kind of substance abuse, for example, drink driving, and that if you were pulled over and you might say, oh, sorry, I was under the influence because you've consumed too much alcohol. And then relating that to this idea of consuming too much content, that then you are negatively under the influence of what you've consumed. And I think that's really interesting to think about what's coming up in your Explore feed. What are you being shown every day? Or what are you as an influencer showing people every day? How might that be influencing them? And what is your responsibility around that influence?
Yeah, so I suppose the next thing I'll speak to, actually, I can almost start with one of the questions here that I really like, but it's kind of like, I guess, where we think that influencer culture is heading. And there's just a question here that says, how in an oversaturated market of influencers do you uphold transparency and honesty, which is sort of kind of what I will touch on here and answer. But yeah, I guess we feel like that there will always be a time and a place for traditional influencers. And I mean, we still see it working for brands all the time. And I suppose that's really the battle for us, is to see this working for other brands and know that if we did it and we really just swan dived in, that we would probably be bigger and more successful than we are. But for us, it's been a choice that we've made that means we can uphold our integrity, and it means that we feel like what we're doing is more truthful and people will believe the things that they see or read about us, because it's not coming from someone who's got, 20 tiles on a story of everything they've been gifted and everything's the best serum that they've ever tried. So, yeah, I guess we really think about our influence and our network of influence and influencers, and also just about our content in general. So I think when people experience our brand from our content to on someone else's page, it should, for us, feel the same. Like, it shouldn't really feel dishonest on one person's page and then they come to our page and see something or feel something or experience something different. So for us, in terms of, how we've kind of gone about our process, it's really been picking people that it's not about how many followers they have or anything like that. It's about people that we think they're speaking about important things or they care about the same values as Fluff. And it's often people that end up becoming customers or people that we end up hanging out with, whether that's on the internet and we chat to them all the time, or they write issues for us, or they continue to engage with the brand. And for us, it's really more of this relationship, because, there is obviously a power in these influential people. And it's like, if we can build a relationship with them that's longer than us sending them product and then posting and it disappearing, that's really valuable to us. And they can keep popping up in our brand and engaging with the brand.
I think that's where we sort of made this really conscious decision to change our definition of, or from an influencer to an activist, in that they're actively involved and engaged in a conversation with us and their audience about what they care about. And what they care about isn't necessarily products or consumption. That doesn't mean they Fluff's overall mission and idea, in that we really want consumers within the beauty industry to want to be themselves and to see themselves reflected in Fluff. And when they see an image of anyone on our Instagram feed, that it encourages them to be like themselves, not the person that they're looking at. Because this is sort of the big problem we see with influencer culture, is that people are aspiring to be like that influencer or that founder. They're wanting their belt, their couch, their house, as opposed to discovering or finding their own style, their own opinions.
Yeah, there was one of the girls that used to work here, she described it really well, and she just said, she showed us kind of some imagery and things, and she said, these posts make me feel like I want to be me. And then these other ones that were very different make me feel like I want to be them. And she's like, I want our content to make people feel like they want to be themselves. And that's really what we're looking for, you should feel reflected in the brand. And I think that is much more than someone just posting it and being like, oh, I want that product too. So yeah, as I said, this process obviously means we've moved a little slower. But for us, that's been such an intentional decision. And for us, it means we're not just going to pop up and kind of disappear as well. It means we can be around for longer because our brand is built on integrity and people will actually believe the things that we're saying about it.
Yeah. And we do see this, I guess, getting this feedback from consumers in the industry that there is sort of this lack of trust for traditional influencers because they are promoting the same amount of products or brands or multiple products that are the same. So really it's like, where is that authentic referral gone? And this is why I think we have to see a sort of bursting of this bubble in a way, or some kind of move back towards the original smaller community of word of mouth and peers recommending products to each other. I don't go on Instagram to find stuff, but I might ask my friend who is not even promoting anything where they got their top from or where their travels have been. Like, that's what influences me, hearing about them finding their own style.
There's a question here that's kind of interesting. It says, I want to start a brand. I have an idea, but why wouldn't I try someone like Kylie Jenner to use my product? Wouldn't it make my brand really successful? And I think that's really what we're kind of talking about here. And it's also, I think what's interesting that I guess I hadn't thought of until you and I discussed it recently as well, was that how prepared you need to be for something like that too, in terms of, if she was to post, like the influx you would have and the amount of stock you would need to have to be prepared for that kind of a thing. But it's this complete, you would be there and then you would disappear because the thing she posts about tomorrow is the next big thing. So I think, for us, it's like we're happy to move slowly and we're happy to kind of take this path and have the time to build something that we really care about and we know that we believe in and that kind of anyone who tries it would as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a much bigger conversation too around like why you're in business in the first place. Is it just to be successful and to make a lot of money? Then maybe you should pay Kylie Jenner, but I don't really know how you would sleep at night. And again, it's like, if you have the opportunity to build a brand with meaning or with impact, why wouldn't you choose to do that? We live in a time where we have enough products and we have enough stuff. So why would you, I guess, create something that already exists? Because then you're just adding to the noise. You're adding to the amount of waste that brands and companies are producing and not actually thinking about the impact that you're having and that it could be positive, that it could be outside of yourself and your career, that it could benefit a lot of other people. And what I would do if you think about some of these influencers that have huge reach, whether it's the Jenners or whether it's others, it's just like really trying to understand what they care about, what they talk about, what values you have, what other products they promote. Because you, as a brand, if you're working with them, you're aligning with their values and what they promote around diet culture or around consumption or around status and wealth. You have to decide whether that aligns with your brand. It's just like choosing who you're friends with. Like, this is you choosing who you're friends with online, and that says a lot about you. I think kind of where we also wanted to go is sort of like, what does this mean for you as individuals, whether you're studying, whether you're already working for a brand, whether you have your own idea for a brand? Like, what is the market like right now? What are the opportunities and what are the barriers? Within sort of micro influencer culture, which I think is still important in terms of identifying smaller individuals who have influence, whether that's just on their 10 friends or their 100 friends, there is definitely some merit in that. We spend a lot of time with small communities of our sort of target audience in which we talk to them. Again, they contribute issues for us. We do gift some product where possible, but it's never with the expectation that they'll post. It's purely wanting fluff to be in their lives and knowing if they really care about it and want to share it, they will. I think that the barriers is definitely, as Ellen mentioned, like supply and demand, being able to meet the influx of orders if you do work with a bigger influencer. But of course, again, being able to pay their fee and then questioning, like putting this into your budgeting and forecasting as to whether you can afford to continually use them. And when they stop posting, is that just going to mean the sales are going to stop? I think the other thing we sort of wanted to kind of really talk about was, a lot of people think that being an influencer as a career might be very easy, but it's such a competitive space these days, and being able to justify to brands your reach and your impact and creating content that will stand out amongst the masses is another really difficult task, and something that we view, like, I guess we feel really strongly about that in terms of what people are producing for us, seeing if they actually care, seeing if they've taken on board what we're about.
And I would say, I feel like there's different things people will connect with the brand. Like, some people are really into, obviously, the vegan side of things of us. Some people like are more design oriented and love kind of the aesthetic of the actual compacts and things like that themselves. Or then there's just the overall kind of brand values and kind of where we're reaching to with this idea that beauty is more than makeup. So it's different elements people will connect with for sure. But yeah, I guess we could also touch on like how you sort of got here and your experience across, I guess, because someone sort of said they feel like they have a bit of a love-hate relationship with influencers, which I feel like.
Totally. I have a love-hate relationship with them as well, because in many ways, like, I wouldn't have my career or the successes that I've had without them. But it was a very different type of influencer in 2013 that I engaged with as it is now. We are finding our pockets of influential people or activists that we want to talk to and build a long-term relationship with. And to be honest, those relationships really excite me and they give me hope. But I found the traditional influencer model like very, I guess, soul destroying in some ways, and very empty and not engaging, both intellectually and both emotionally. I think that when I left Frank Body, I really had this idea where, or I guess sort of hope that consumers would become so much more influential than influencers themselves, and that we would, I guess, maybe narrow in on who we look to for referrals, but more than anything, like, just go within ourselves to be like, what do I care about? What do I like? And of course, you know, we are the result of everyone we know, and it's so great to see and be inspired by other people, but it's about then putting your own spin on things and about always asking questions about, why do I like this? Why does a whole millennial pink feed speak to me? Is it because I truly love that color? Is it because I've just seen it everywhere? Why don't I like yellow? Is it because I genuinely have an aversion to that color, or is it because I've never seen it before and it's unfamiliar and it's not something that's been in the beauty industry? So this is where we kind of talk about like creating your own influences as opposed to just following someone else, and really breaking down the words like that on Instagram. Like, are we just following as opposed to leading our own way?
And then do you, I guess, ever have days though where you're, like we were saying, I know you and I both have this feeling sometimes of seeing someone who someone posts about and they just blow up, and it's like, for both us, we're just like, we're trying.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. And I think that, again, it's the difference between maybe Fluff being at a certain point within 2 years versus being at that point in 10 years. And that's what you really have to factor into your business model, I think, or your planning from the beginning. Like, how long are you willing to wait? Are there time pressures? You know, I think that when I look at some of the influencers that I might not necessarily align with, I also can recognize that they speak to customers who I would align with, or who are impressionable that I would like to reach and have a conversation with. So that's the other thing, you know, how do you work with their brand and their type of communication or their aesthetic to reach their audience? And it is a really tricky one. It involves some element of compromise for sure.
And I mean, yeah, we say we're like pretty proud to say that we've never paid for a post, but do you ever feel like we have got it wrong with people we have sent it to still?
Yeah, I think there's been moments where I have thought I would like to reach that audience, and I know that I can through this influencer who doesn't necessarily align with Fluff. And then just based on the engagement or the conversations we have with them, I know that they don't really care. Like, they are in it for the money. Or they are in it just, there's no actual connection. And, you know, we believe so much in Fluff's vision that we think that essentially it's like, why wouldn't people align with that? And perhaps that's our biggest task, is being able to really tell that story of Fluff and what we're about. And that's probably another barrier, is that we're in such a I guess, saturated market that there is so many brands. So it's very easy for people to be like, you're just another makeup company. You know, we sort of demand these elevator pitches for brands, like, tell me what your difference is in 30 seconds, which is really hard. Like, I always say to people, come over for dinner, I'll talk to you for 3 hours about what Fluff cares about. And then people can't walk away. Do you know what I mean? But we don't have 6 hours. We don't have, you know, essays or books to give people on Fluff. We have either 30 seconds in a conversation, or we have a small caption on Instagram. It's really difficult to convey your difference.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, is we're trying to move slowly in a space that everything else around us is going really fast. That's what it feels like. It's like, tell us the pitch fast, tell us this quickly, do this quickly. And it's like, we're just like, chill.
Yeah. So Fluff's approach is really that slower is faster, and that is something that we want to encourage in the industry in general. We want the beauty industry to be better in terms of their messaging, in terms of their products, and in terms of their impact. And we know that we are sort of committed to a longer, slower path. And I think one of you guys have asked a question around, like, what are our community engagement methods around maintaining the brand and this connection with influencers or clients. And it is super laborious. Like, it takes time. And this is the other thing about traditional social media influencers, is it has become so fast and so lazy and so disconnected. It's emails, it's product sent, it's posting, it's forgetting about it. It's not actually establishing a relationship with people who know who founded Fluff, who know who are working behind the scenes, who care about where those products are from and how they've made, and then what the brand thinks about and why they exist. So it's a lot of conversations. We had people into our store in Melbourne, and they might stay for 3 hours. That is not a financially viable, like, business model, talking to a customer for 3 hours. But it's so important to us, especially in these initial stages of our brand, and it will be the hardest thing for us probably to scale. But that connection or that loyalty that you foster and build is what hopefully will mean that Fluff will be around for 10, 20 years and hopefully evolve with our customers, as opposed to being this trend for a couple of years that's very quickly forgotten or replaced by the new next big thing.
We also have, which I feel like if we sort of thought about it in this framework, we also have a WhatsApp channel, which is for our reps. But I feel like if we thought about it, they really did start as sort of more, I guess, influencers, whether we reached out to them or they reached out to us and were like, hey, I really love this, I really get this, like, how can I be more involved? Or people, like I said, that we had reached out to initially, where that relationship has really developed. And it's just a place where they can talk amongst themselves, or they can ask us questions directly. Sometimes it's just really, really basic stuff. Like, someone's like, hey, I got a new teddy bear, can you help me name it? Like,
totally.
And it's just, but it's also a place for, when you talk about community engagement, for our community, I guess, to engage with each other and to kind of connect over, obviously, shared values, or whether they have recommendations or questions or anything really. And that is, I guess, like a very intimate kind of way that we go about that.
And I think that is really, like, how I would sum up Fluff's sort of engagement with influencers. Like, I value the influence of the girls in our rep channel more than I do probably a traditional social media influencer, because I know that theirs has more longevity and that it has more value.
Someone's just asked a question which I feel like we always have to address because it is important. Someone just said, is the handle It's All Fluff a bit of a nod to the fact that there are so many products out there? I feel like it's always good to just give people a little context of why.
Yeah, totally. So Fluff is, really is this idea that products are fluff, advertising is fluff, the industry is fluff. And we use that word in the fact that it's probably not necessary. It's just an additional, it's fun, but it's not the be all and end all. And we really liked this idea that if people were to tag us, that they're actually, like, using that in a sentence. And so if they were like, I'm wearing a bronzer today, it's all fluff. They're not just saying what brand it is, but they're saying, I know that this isn't everything, that I'm not defined by the makeup that I wear or the products that I put on my face. And it also gives us a bit of a license to, like, do whatever we want on social, and why our content is probably a little bit more lo-fi, or why we can get away with being so much more honest and not caring, because we are constantly reminding people that this is all fluff, including social media usage. And I think that that's something we always really want to encourage for you guys to is like this awareness and reminder, and to sort of go back to what you really care about. So if you are pursuing a career, if you're working for another brand, like just remembering that being influential is not defined to an Instagram page. You can be influential within a company. If you want to start a skincare brand, maybe you should look to the industry first. See if there is a skincare brand that you like or that you think you could go and work for and fix, that might have the resources and the finances to actually make that change. It's incredibly hard to, one, compete in the startup industry on your own, or two, to have the capital to make the change to compete with these bigger brands. So I would argue and really encourage people, like, perhaps it is better, or you will have more influence working from the ground up within a company.
Definitely. And I think as well, it's like I've sort of said to you that I think it's really important to remember how you get there, and the path you take to get there can be a little zigzaggy too. I mean, I can sort of speak to my experience a little bit as well, which I was saying to Ari before we did this talk, like I remember being in uni and all these people would come and do talks. So I studied the most length of a journalism degree but didn't quite finish. And then I went on and did a communication design degree as well and finished that. But in both courses, I remember people would come in and do these talks about how they'd studied journalism, and then they'd gone on and got an internship at a magazine, and then now they were this writer and blah, 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 blah. And I remember thinking, I know I really like this course and I'm learning really valuable things, but I don't really feel like that's my trajectory. And I never felt like there was anyone else as well in my course that was sort of thinking I can take things that I'm learning from here and apply them somewhere else or into another kind of setting. And so, yeah, for me, I would say, yeah, it's around how do you want to influence as well, which is like my decision or my kind of goal to work here was around that, was that, you know, I think I could do something really good within a brand, whether that be big or small, but knowing that what I'd studied could also be so useful in this setting too. So I think, yeah, if you're kind of studying something or you're looking to study something and you're not sure if, you know, say it's journalism and the end goal that they tell you is writing, I think just look at kind of the course and the content within it and how you think that could apply to other areas too. And you don't have to take that really straight, narrow line. Because, yeah, I just remember I found that a little bit disheartening or confusing for me, where I felt like I was not doing what everyone else was doing, but I also felt like I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But couldn't put my finger on what that was. And I think the kind of key there would also be to try a lot of things if you're not sure, and kind of take from each thing you try what it is you like, and whether that's working in a store or whatever it is you do. I think it's really important in any job or internship to be like, hey, I didn't love that as a whole, but I know I really liked talking to people throughout my day as a part of my job. Like I enjoyed the customer service side of things, and just taking those learnings and being like, cool, what can I actually place those into that I could do?
And in trying new things, I think you really discover your influence or your sort of power. And that's why we say, like, influence is not necessarily about products or what you wear or how you look. It's what you think and what you have to say. That is our greatest influence. And to form those opinions for yourself, not to follow others. So a couple of people have asked, so do you call your influencers influencers? So our definition of an influencer, we call them activists. And that was a really conscious change for us. And it's actually really helped us in how we search for or engage with specific people online. So they have to be actively involved in some kind of conversation around what they care about, and they have to be actively involved in caring about or discussing Fluff and the impact that we're having. If they don't have an interest in that, then we're essentially not interested in pursuing a relationship with them. Another great question, which I love and that is a big internal conflict for us at times, is, I know that as a brand you value the reusable, consume less ideas. So how do you justify the plastic-based items, example, the Magic 8 Ball or the key tag? Which is a great question, and for us, or what I'm always trying to say, is we are so far from perfect and we are learning so much. Those 8 balls were a decision we made 4 years ago. and still have some. And I want to be like deeply regret, but also it's just like at the time, the level of care that people had around consumption, it was there, but it was not at where it was now. And so we were left with a small amount of these items, which we won't be continuing. And what I have learned in coming into this industry has been the impact of what we produce and how what everything comes in. And even if you produce an item without plastic, it usually gets sent to you in plastic. It's a really hard thing, and it's not something that we can change overnight. And it involves so many discussions with our suppliers and them changing their own supply systems and processes. But it's one that we're really prioritising. And so now to making much more considered decisions about what we release. With items such as our key tags, again, it's this thing where it's like, what do we want here? We always want to produce smaller quantities now, so trying to keep everything that is one-off, like under 1,000 units, because we just think it's a waste to do anything more. And again, being like trialing something to see if it works within the industry, and then being like, how can we make this better? What could we do? A glass key ring or a metal key ring, but how much would we charge for that? So it's sort of balancing like where our customers are, how much they're willing to pay for things, what they're into and what they like.
And I think it's also something that we've always tried to do, and I think we're getting better and better at, is being really transparent around these things on our social media.
Yeah.
And I think this also ties in back to kind of where we sit with our activists, is that if we have like a certain level of transparency and that's what we think our customers want from us, then that's the same thing we would want to see from like people that are engaging with our brand as well. And whether that's we might, like, if they give us feedback about something, that's all things that we take on, and it's also not things that we hide away. We're not like, ooh, this person has said this, quick, hide it. It's like, no, we're happy to kind of share that and be like, yeah, we could be better. Because, I mean, if we thought we were the best, then we would definitely not be.
Yeah. I think any brand that tells you that they're perfect or sustainable is lying to you, because the most sustainable thing we could do is stop. Like when you are producing an item, like you are leaving the world worse off than when it started. So it's around this idea of like, if we live in a society where we consume things, how can we be better? You know, and kind of off the back of that, we have this thing around cancel culture where brands and individuals are being, I guess, pulled down on social, and influencers are really being, they have to be way more accountable, and they are now being asked what they care about and what their values are. And in many ways, I think this is really good for the industry, but I think there needs to be a compromise on nuance, and that consumers need to understand the full picture of what they are asking or demanding of brands. Like, it's great that we want everyone to be better, but we also need to understand what it takes to be better, which is why what Ellen said, I think, is really important around this idea of being open and transparent, being vulnerable enough as a brand and a company, or as a founder, as an employee, to say, this is where we want to be. We're not there yet, but we're showing you the roadmap and we are committed to getting there. And hopefully then you'll be able to develop this sort of empathy with your customers, and where they will be, I don't know if forgiving is the right word, but there'll be more understanding of the time that it takes to get there. And again, this is all like so much more laborious and emotionally time intensive, but we feel that this is the way that brands need to go. And from an individual, like personal level, it's so much more fulfilling.
There's one here that I think we can both speak to too, that says, how do you define your brand and stories and keep it authentic when social media trends are changing and saturated with paid advertisement? So I mean,
another struggle.
Yeah, we could also go on about this for a solid 10 hours, but I think it's probably one of our biggest challenges, and something that honestly we just have to check in with each other and our customers as often as we can. And again, it's not something we're always going to get right. I think there's been times where we've posted something and been like, why did we post that? But it's like, we're getting better at knowing for us what feels really good when we put it up, and being like, we know that that's a good post, and also knowing what defines a good post for us. And for us, it's not like that was a good post and a good post is 1,000 likes or whatever it is. For us, it's like, we know that that felt really true to us and really true to Fluff.
Yeah.
And we felt really happy with it, whether it gets 5 or 1,000. And then we also know there's another version of a good post, which might be a really heavily like product-based post, but we still feel okay about that. And I think that's kind of the balance we've been trying to find, is how do we feel okay about a more producty thing and not feel like we're oversaturating people's feeds with just kind of flogging them with fluff? And also, how do we then post these really obscure kind of things and know that that will also still be kind of consumed well?
Yeah, it's sort of this, I think it's a dilemma for the publishing industry in general, whether it's print or digital, in that, you know, this is the clickbait kind of argument. Do you just give consumers what they're clicking on, or do you say, this is what I want you to click on? And you maybe sacrifice the readership and the views and your advertising because you're producing content that you value and has integrity. But we have to be able to put those different opinions out there and those different types of content for people to then feel empowered to make those choices about what they consume. And that's where, like, we really try and stand by this idea of, like, Fluff is entitled to an opinion about the beauty industry. Ours is that it's a bit bullshit. You don't have to agree. You can have your own, but we will find our kind of community of people who want more from the industry. Which is kind of sort of leads on to a question here that it says, like, what steps are we taking to move forward and take our brand to the next level, to be more conscious and to be your own activist? Like, how can you make Fluff better? Which is like what I ask myself every single day, to be honest. And I want Fluff's brand to be an influencer, not a person. And that's really interesting. And so for us, it's about just constantly having these conversations. And that's the battle, because sort of with our stats or the feedback we would get as a beauty brand is that consumers previously didn't really want you to have an opinion. Now they are asking for it more, so it's good, but it's still, if you go too deep or if you say things that are too outside of, like, the commonly held opinions, you do get a bit berated for it, or you do get weird looks, or you do get uncomfortable silences. And so we have to be sort of stand by that and be like, we're going to keep having these conversations. Every time we have the opportunity to do a product, I could release 10 different lipsticks tomorrow if I wanted to, made of crap, stopping and being like, this isn't on our pipeline. This isn't the vision of Fluff. We want to have less, and we want to really always come back to, how does our content make people feel? And when we get feedback from customers, not just saying, like, thanks, we're taking it on board, but, like, actually taking it on board and showing, I guess, the process or the commitment and the time it's going to take. Like, being honest that it might take longer than overnight, or it might be something we're going to implement in 2 years. And that's something we're trying to do on our social and through our emails, through my own personal, like, social profiles. And what we're sort of looking at going forward with the brand is actually publishing our sort of, like, tree of, like, the future of Fluff and what it is that we are committing to and doing, so that our stakeholders and our consumers can follow that journey and keep us accountable. And then if we don't hit our timeline, we'll be able to explain why or update it, and you guys can be along that journey with us.
Yeah, and I suppose, like, to be a bit more granular there, like, an example would be, so we've had people messaging us, our current bronzer compact comes in this plastic sleeve. And so people were messaging being like, you know, why does it come in that, you know, asking for us to be better, which is great, and we love that. And the transparency that we could give there was like, we have these already in stock that we ordered how many years ago?
4.
Yeah, 4 years ago. And for us to switch over right now to a different sort of packaging would mean literally throwing those away, which is just, to us, seems like a bit silly. So it's like, we are switching over. We've got them sitting here ready to go with a better packaging code, but it's like, we need to get through these ones that we have before we just put more waste out there for the sake of, I guess, looking better. And that's the kind of thing. It's like, we would rather make these decisions that are actually better than just kind of a knee-jerk reaction so that we look better straight away.
I think someone has asked, like, what does being better look like to us, and like, should the industry have stronger regulations around ingredients and production? And I don't think that we should have to wait for the industry to regulate to be better, because there's so much knowledge out there, and it is possible to make better products. So for me, it's like, maybe I will believe that my job is done, or that Fluff stops when, like, a big thing that's come up for us is that most or majority of brands are creating refillable products. That's something that we sort of wasn't in our initial pipeline, but we sort of came about along the way, and it's become like such a fundamental part of our brand. The fact that I can have like one lip oil compact now for the rest of my life means that maybe I'm sparing the world like 30 extra additional tubes of plastic. And when you multiply that by how many people are in the world, or even just in Australia, like that's where individual impact makes a difference. I think being better for me is like regulation around influencers and the type of products they promote and the messages that they put around beauty and diet culture. I think really needs to be regulated. We obviously, again, as I mentioned earlier, like aren't aware yet of the full consequences of the content that we've been putting out for the last 5 years. And that was one of the reasons why I started. I was really worried about the 30-year-olds that my young cousins at the time were going to be and become, because we all have our own insecurities from consuming content. I think the messaging of brands, that's how I want the industry to be better, for consumers to know who started brands, to know where they bought their products from, to know where the ingredients are sourced. Again, to understand the nuances and to be able to hold that space for brands to have that conversation and to just consume, I guess, more consciously, like make the decisions like, this is why I own that toothbrush. This is where it's from. This is why I buy this shirt. I like it from here. Or I know who the designer is. Like that's for me, the industry taking a few small steps to be better. I think the other thing is that beauty, very similarly to the fashion industry, is tied to seasonality and releasing lots of products on certain points of time. And we are feeding that demand from consumers and only encouraging them to want new instead of having less. And for a while, what we saw was it was quite a sort of a status of, I guess, or a social status to have a cabinet full of products and have them color coordinated. And it was like, look how amazing this is. Now there's actually a lot of shame around that. It's like, look how much of a waste this is. I do not need 10 cleansers. I need one. Those 5 of those 10 cleansers will expire before I can finish one of them. That awareness and that sort of, I guess, understanding that that product is not going to make you really happy, like it's just not the right thing to do.
I think as well we've said that, you know, we would love people to not speak about like it's what's happening now and it's fine, but it's like we would love that there was a time where being vegan and not having palm oil in your products wasn't anything
that you deserved a medal for.
Yeah.
It was like, just like that's just how we produce products.
That
now
should be the standard, and we're sort of looking forward to that day where someone comes along and does it even better, and then they're the next kind of standard, and it's like everyone's trying to kind of get there. But yeah, I don't feel like, you know, vegan products or having content that doesn't make you feel like shit should be something that we should be congratulated for. I would love for that to just be the standard.
Yeah. Someone has asked that, Erica, you founded another beauty brand. How is the influencer strategy different? And I mean, hopefully this whole talk will have illustrated that, but we don't send out 5,000 units of product every month. We are very selective to who we gift to. We don't pay for influencer posts, and we aren't, when we're looking for activists, looking for people necessarily with a certain amount of followers or aesthetic. Like usually it's like they are having conversations and talking about them. And then we start not by saying, hey, we want to send you product. We're like, hey, we want to talk. What do you care about? Like, we have issues with the beauty industry. Do you? Is there any alignment? And then we build a relationship with them over time. We will send them product if they're interested, without any expectation of posting, see how they feel, maybe pick the conversation up later. But first and foremost, we ask them to contribute to our issues page. And we just want like good people having our product out there. If we believe that they care about things like refillable beauty, if we think that they are backing brands that are cruelty-free and vegan, sure. Like, so we're just like, have Fluff. It seems like it'll suit you.
And it can also be people who we think are creating cool art too. There's a lot of people who have just really interesting photos of things we haven't seen. And for us, it's also like, hey, you know, we think you could create something really beautiful with this.
We are like influenced outside of the beauty industry. Like we're influenced by a lot of skate culture, music culture, and like art culture, like we always want our content to make people feel something, because the people we're drawn to have made us feel something other than just being like, this fits into the beauty industry.
Yeah.
And someone has asked a great question where they've said, I don't really know what I stand for yet, but I have Fluff. Can I still be an influencer for Fluff? And I would say you are an influencer for Fluff already, or you are an activist. Like, you have your certain group of friends. When you go out for dinner with them, and if this lip oil is on the table and they ask you what it is, you can tell them what Fluff stands for. And if it's what you stand for too, like, that's you opening up a conversation. If you end up influencing one of your friends to buy Fluff, like, you have done your job. That is your influence. I take great pride in that. It's like, if I can just influence one person in my life to be better or to think differently about themselves, like, that's my job done. So that is really our strategy around individuals and the influence that they can have, not this sort of mainstream generic idea of a traditional social media influencer.
And I would argue on that one as well, that when they said, I don't really know what I stand for, I feel like in even just purchasing the product, you obviously do stand for something, because there's a reason you chose to buy this over another product. So there's got to be something sort of there where you already, you know, as we said, are that kind of activist mind state.
And that was what we sort of had when we were thinking about tying up our talk around what advice we would actually give to you guys if you're unsure of what you stand for, or whether you work for another company and you want to see change, or if you want to start your own business. I have done this exercise many times. I do it again because your ideas are going to change over years as you grow. But to like start by writing down what you care about. It could be so simple. It could be friends, family. It could be self-care. There's so many things. Then write down what you're good and you're bad at in life, what you feel like you could improve, what could be better, or what you think you're doing really well at. I would suggest to write down a list of all the brands that you care about or purchase from, and ask yourself why you purchase from them and what do they have in common. Then you'll start getting this idea of like who you gravitate towards. Like, do they all care about cruelty-free products? Do they all care about this message around inclusivity? This is where you start to build this idea of yourself. And to take a look at like all the products in your house, or all the clothes in your wardrobe, your toothbrush, the food items you consume. Where are they coming from? What does the box say? Who started it? Like, is that from Australia or is it from overseas? Does it matter if it's from overseas? What do you know about that brand? Like, can that be an extension of you, or does it not need to be an extension of you? And then sort of asking, like, could they be better? What decisions have they made? Was it necessary for them to put that product out there, or was it not? You know, even if it's plastic, is it still something that means something to you and connects with you? This is where you sort of start really breaking down like the nuances of brands and consumption, and can formulate an opinion of your own.
And I would add to that as well, writing down what you're good and bad at. But I also think a really useful exercise is writing down, which is something we do as a part of our performance reviews here, is what am I good at that I like doing, and what am I good at that I don't like doing, and what am I like bad at that I like doing that I'd like to be better at too. I think that's a really valuable exercise in kind of thinking where you would want to sort of grow your strengths. And also I just think, one of the most valuable things I kind of did amongst this process was also, as I said earlier, writing down all the things, even about your worst job that you've had. And it could have been a casual job, like a friggin' paper run on a Sunday. And it's like, what about it though did I like? What was the one thing that I kind of got out of that was still valuable to me? And I think that is really what steered me in a path, because I felt like I didn't have heaps of career experience in like an office, but it was like, what are all the other little bits that I've learned from anything that I've done that could lead me into the kind of place that I want to go?
And I would view it what you found your influence is around your like connection to customers and your understanding of how they think and your empathy with them, and then how you can communicate. So there's two really interesting questions here. One is, what are your opinions on collaborating with other brands that carry similar values? And I would say, great, do it. Like, we do it. We're really selective, and I try and obviously have conversations or know the brands, because this is a way where you can probably find similar audiences to reach and share. So we have done sort of like giveaways. You want it to have heart though. Like, it's very easy to do a typical just post and like this and whatever, but you also have the opportunity to tell a story with your collaboration with another brand. So again, just think about, what do I like about them? What are they offering? What will our consumers get out of it? You know, is there longevity in this? And try and keep it ongoing. Like, we don't really like one-off things either. I would much rather develop an ongoing, strong partnership with someone.
And also for us, I think, you know, we always say it's interesting that people would view other brands in similar spaces as competition. And we're kind of like, if we have the opportunity to talk to someone who's in a similar position to us doing something similar, that's a learning experience for us too. And even that conversation of whether we end up collaborating with them or not, but even just reaching out to them and being like, hey, we think we care about the same things. We're kind of working in the same areas. Let's just have a wine and chat.
Yeah,
and
what would a collaboration look like? And then
like,
deciding to pursue it or not.
I think it's such an exciting thing. And it's always, even if we just take one little bit of information from it or one thing that's helpful or vice versa, we think that's amazing.
Yeah. And so if you are going to reach out to like-minded brands, like, do that, and it's putting yourself out there. But if you don't ask, the answer might be no. But I think it's not just saying let's collaborate or do a giveaway. It's like, first, just have a connection with them. Talk about what you love about them. Talk about what you love about your own brand. Give them ideas. Like, start the conversation. There's one final question, and that I do really want to answer because it's amazing. And it said, what do I study at uni to be an influencer? Do I need training? My personal opinion that I'm just going to say is, like, don't be an influencer. And I don't have any, or don't be a traditional social media influencer. And I don't think it's something that you can be taught. You kind of have inherent leadership qualities about you, and that's what I would say is an influential person. I don't know whether uni has courses like this. It's been a while since I've been at uni. I know we had a youth media elective, but there was nothing around influencing. Of course, there are social media strategies and around finding what your vibe and aesthetic is. You can take the easy, quick, lazy way of just doing what other influencers are doing that you know works, but I feel like that won't give you fulfillment in the long term. So your training is just your practice in life around having conversations with people, really discovering what you love, what you care about, and then naturally you should want to tell other people what you care about. And that's where you will find your influence. Again, your influence doesn't equal 100,000 followers. Your influence can equal 1,000 followers. It can equal 5 friends. But you need to start there, like, really on the intention. And because when your, like, heart is in it, like, you will naturally gain a following. So I guess I would say to you, if you want to have 100,000 followers in a month, I am the wrong person to talk to. Like, I can't give you advice. There are courses that you can do to do that, but I think that they are full of shit. And I would definitely encourage you to seek a more fulfilling or intentional career. And again, I'm not saying that I think being an influential person is bad. I look up to people, but it's like, find what your version of influential is and find what you care about and then share that with other people. That's our end of our rant.
Guys, honestly, it was so popular, and I think, you know, it's just going back to, like, literally the whole last 45 minutes is just such an important lesson that I think that a lot of people are sort of taking from you guys, is that the conversation that you actually drive, you know, really is just something that not many people can actually get at this point in time. And, you know, even just completely dissecting, you know, even your Instagram account yourself, like, it is, you know, offering another conversation. I think that's the reason why it's so popular, is because, you know, people are, like, especially girls, you know, and guys, like, they're just really thirsty for that kind of discussion. I think that, you know, according to the chat box, you could have kept on going for another couple of hours, but unfortunately we had to kind of to wrap you up. Yeah. But I did want to just let everyone know that, you know, please jump over to their guys' website and Instagram. It's just such a beacon of information. Join in on the conversations. You know, be a part of the whole movement, and, you know, and of course, like, if you want to buy product, but, you know, it's more important just to, you know, be involved in the conversation and working out what it is that you stand for. And we're super pumped that that the girls have actually given us some really cool goodies that will be in your virtual goodie bag that you'll get after the event. So I mean, guys, did you have anything that you wanted to say just to wrap up? Because it was just amazing. Thank you for your time.
There is just one thing I'd love to say is if you are on our website or our Instagram and there's any other questions you had or you wanted to keep chatting, feel free to email us or DM us. You will literally be speaking to one of us, like we're two people. And we also run at the moment, it's a digital internship program. We're sort of halfway through one at the moment. But that's something also that we're obviously kind of the audience would be the kind of people who would be interested in something like that. So yeah, if you head to our website, the email address is bunnies@itsallfluff.com, or you can just DM us and we can move you to email from there as well. So yeah, we'd love to keep talking to people. I mean, like we said, we could talk forever.
Oh, awesome. Well, Erica and Alan, thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And guys, we will also be sending all the registrants all of their details as well, so you can continue on with the conversation if you, didn't get what Alan just said then about the Bunnies address. So don't worry, we'll be sending you everything that you need to continue on the conversation with the guys. And Alan and Erica, thank you so much for your time again. It was just awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.